What you are looking at is a shocking story of a man who survived being impaled like you'll never see again. Imagine this. You're sitting in a dark theater, a little nervous but curious. The lights dim, and the audience falls silent. A man walks onto the stage, his chest bare. He looks calm, maybe even a bit too calm. Then, without any warning, his assistant steps forward and shoves a sword straight through the man's chest. Now, this is where things get weird. There's no scream, no blood. The man doesn't even flinch. The sword goes in and he just stands there, like it's no big deal. If you were in that audience, you'd probably think, there's no way this is real. And you'd be right to think that. Most people would. But here's the crazy part. This wasn't a magic trick or an illusion. This man wasn't pretending. His name was Mirin Dajo, or the human pincushion, and he did this kind of thing all the time. He let swords, daggers, even spears pass right through his body. And he didn't feel a thing. Not only that, he didn't bleed. No pain, no damage. So how could this be happening? Was he invincible, or was there a secret behind it? And the bigger question, how did he do it? Let's dig into the story and find out. Who was Mirin Dajo? Mirin Dajo, born Arnold Gerrit Henskes in 1912 in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, wasn't always a performer. For most of his life, he worked as a graphic artist. But something changed when he hit his 30s. Around 1945, Dajo claimed to have discovered that his body was able to handle incredible trauma, things that would normally kill or seriously injure a regular person. He said he could pierce his body with swords and knives and not feel any pain. He even claimed to be invulnerable to injury, like some kind of superhuman. But here's the kicker. He wasn't just showing off these powers for fun. Dajo believed that his ability came from a higher force, maybe even divine protection. He thought his purpose was to prove that love, peace, and spiritual enlightenment were more important than materialism and wealth. So, he quit his job and started performing, letting people see this miracle for themselves. He truly believed that his work was not just about the thrill of danger, but a spiritual message. He took the stage name Mirin Dajo, which means miracle in Esperanto. He traveled to different cities performing his act. He would stand on stage, calm and still, while his assistant would shove sharp objects like swords, fencing foils, and even spears straight through his body. And every time the same thing happened. Dajo wouldn't flinch, he wouldn't scream, and there was no blood. It was like he was invincible. But we all know nothing is as simple as it seems. So how was he really doing it? The doctors investigate. As Dajo's performances grew more popular, medical professionals became curious. In May 1947, a group of doctors in Zurich decided to conduct a series of tests to figure out exactly what was happening. The chief surgeon and several medical students were there to witness the event. They were skeptical. There's no way a man can survive being pierced by swords without injury, they thought. But when Dajo allowed the doctor to shove a fencing foil through his body, something strange happened. The sword went in, but there was no bleeding. There was no sign of injury. The doctors were shocked. They immediately took x-rays which showed that the sword had indeed passed straight through Dajo's body, from one side to the other. The sword wasn't just going through the skin, it was going through his organs, bypassing things like his liver, lungs, and intestines. How was that even possible? It didn't stop there. The doctors insisted that Dajo's assistant keep shoving sharp objects through his body, and each time, Dajo remained perfectly fine. Afterward, Dajo walked calmly to the X-ray room, sword still sticking out of his body, without even showing signs of distress. So, was this just some kind of magical trick? Or was there something real going on? How did he do it? How could Dajo allow swords and daggers to pass through his body and not suffer any damage? There are a few theories, but none of them fully explain everything. Some doctors think Dajo may have created fistulas. That's a fancy word for tunnels in his body that form after being pierced repeatedly. Basically, he could have created a path through his skin and organs by piercing himself over and over, letting the wounds heal, and then re-piercing the same spots. In other words, the sword could slide through these tunnels, avoiding vital organs and major blood vessels. But even that doesn't explain everything. If that was the case, how did Dajo avoid bleeding? And how did he avoid infection? Some researchers believe Dajo may have used his mind to block out the pain. He claimed that through deep meditation, he could achieve a special state of consciousness that allowed him to control his pain and his body. But while this might sound possible, it still doesn't explain how he could push swords through his body without any injuries. Maybe it was a combination of physical preparation and mental discipline, but who knows for sure. Now let's think about what happens when any regular person tries something like this. If you were to impale yourself with a sword or a spear, there's a good chance you'd bleed out, get an infection, or suffer massive organ damage. And that's if you even survive the initial injury. Impalement is one of the most brutal forms of injury because it causes massive trauma to both the body's structure and the organs inside it. The chances of surviving an impalement without serious injury or death are almost non-existent. But somehow Dajo was able to do this over and over without bleeding or dying. The question is, how? But Dajo didn't stop with just swords. In 1948, he swallowed a steel needle, convinced that it would disappear inside him, protected by the same divine forces that kept him safe from the swords. He thought his body would somehow dematerialize the needle. But when the needle didn't disappear, Dajo had to undergo surgery to have it removed. A few days later, he returned to his deep meditation, but this time, something went wrong. He passed away from an aortic rupture just 10 days after the surgery, at the age of 36. It's believed that the needle, combined with the strain Dajo had put on his body throughout his life, caused the rupture that ultimately ended his life. His mysterious abilities, which had baffled doctors and stunned audiences, couldn't save him this time. And while Dajo's death was tragic, it only deepened the mystery surrounding his strange abilities. So, what was really going on? Mirin Dajo's story remains one of the most mysterious in the world of human endurance. Was he really invincible? Did he have some supernatural power, or was it all a carefully planned trick? The truth is, we may never know. Some people believe Dajo was a master of the body, able to push the limits of human endurance. Others think he was just a man who took extreme risks and paid the ultimate price. But one thing is for sure, his story is unlike any other. It challenges our understanding of human limits and forces us to confront the mysteries of the mind and body. Was Dajo the first true superhero, or just an extraordinary individual who defied the odds? What do you think? Was Dajo actually invincible, or was it all part of a bigger mystery? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more extreme and unbelievable stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and remember, don't try any of this at home, seriously.